So, Mr. Belciu, I've asked two people now about investing in human capital, and I don't think they're purposefully avoiding my question, but they're talking about bigger issues. They're talking about regulation. So, from your viewpoint, from PricewaterhouseCoopers, is that really the key? If you want to invest in humans, that you're just going to have to less regulation, for example, that's the key?
Well, I have a very pragmatic point of view. I think people go where there are more opportunities, and it's not like Romanians don't like Romania and like UK more than Romania. Maybe UK is nicer from many angles, but the reason why people go there is really they have more opportunities, and if we want to keep them here, we need to create for them those opportunities. We need to help the economy grow, we need to expand, and so on. Now, we spoke a lot about the foreign trade and global trade and globalization. Let's look at China. China started as a low-cost country. So US and many other countries pushed production to China because it's cheaper, and ultimately they were making more profits. China was smart enough to leverage on that, and to build their own infrastructure, to build their own capabilities, get into research and development. So now they really have companies which are competitive at the global level without being pumped by American or Western European companies. So they managed to create those opportunities, and the country benefited from that. So all in all, I think we should be looking more on how to build those opportunities. Now, it's true that the world is changing at a very fast pace. And now to get back to your initial question on technology and so on, I think technology is putting a threat on all of us. As globalization is putting a threat on many companies, but as it was discussed before, the idea is what to do in this circumstance, and the idea is not to, if we are just scared, then we lose. The idea is to see that as an opportunity and to transform ourselves. And again, just to deviate a little bit from the discussion,
but I do want something tangible. If you can give me some examples.
I will give you some tangible things, but I think this is interesting as a as a food for thought. If you look at the progress of artificial intelligence, it's a proven fact that a machine can do better diagnosis than a doctor. It's a proven fact that a machine can do better legal research than a lawyer. Now, with this artificial intelligence growing and developing, and with the processing power of a computer, which we will never be able to beat, I guess robots will be smarter than us very fast. I think it's a matter of some tens of years. And when I, thinking of this a while ago, I thought, maybe slavery is back. Now all we need to do is to buy some robots, put them at work for us, and then we stay home, relax at the beach, and we benefit of that. But probably it won't be sustainable.
Yeah.
Therefore,
I think I would miss my paycheck.
Yeah. Therefore, I guess the only reasonable thing to think of is that we will become robots. I think in the future we will all have chips in our brains so that we match the processing power of robots, because otherwise, for us, there is no competitive advantage, or there will be no competitive advantage. But to come back to the topic of discussion and get back to Constanta at the seaside, as any consultant, I put together some charts. So, foreign trade has been out there for many years. Ever since the people started to build ships, of course, foreign trade started to happen. And nowadays it grew significantly. So this chart is showing the flows of foreign trade in and out of Europe. And you see with the orange color the areas where it goes and where it comes from. And I think it's quite obvious that most of the flow is from out of Europe, goes from west to east. So basically towards Asia. And the same is true vice versa. Now, with Constanta being really at the edge between Europe and East, there is obviously an opportunity in this. Now, if we move over on the next page, those TEU 20-foot equivalent, it's a unit of measure to measure the volume of trade at the global level. Now, Europe is roughly 20% of the global trade. You see there on the left-hand side, US. That's the bigger numbers are the westbound, eastbound flows of goods. Now, to stay a little bit at US, because we discussed about this in the previous session, you see the 19.4 million TEUs. That's how much US imports from Asia. 7.5, this is how much they export. If you look at the size of the deficit, is enormous. So I guess...
You're sounding like Mr. Trump.
Well, I mean, it's a reality. I mean, maybe...
We won't laugh at you.
It's a reality. So it's definitely enormous. Now, how you react to that, I think, there are different ways of doing it. But it's the fact is that, it should raise some concerns. Now, to move further down, of course, all that flow is helping a lot certain industries. Shipping and port industry is one of them. And I borrowed a chart, the size of the bubbles. Those are the major ports in the world. The size of the bubble is proportional to the volume of business for that particular flow. You see there on the right-hand side, there's China. So when you see all those big bubbles, there's China. And then when you see the smaller bubbles in the middle, that's Europe. The bigger bubbles are in the northern part of Europe. And there are some a little bit more to the south. But it's clear that there's an important business for certain people. Now, to get back to some more clear and concrete numbers on the next page, those are the top ports in the world. I only put top 100. And by the way, on the previous chart, there was no bubble next to Constanta, not because Constanta does not exist, but it's not in top 100. If you look at the top 100 ports in the world, 8 out of top 10 are Chinese. The first European port is number 11 in the world, and that's Rotterdam. So, and you see there the quantity, actually there's a typo, those are not TEU, those are millions TEU, but the 12.2 million TEUs. To put things into perspective, Constanta is 0.6. So, if we talk about opportunities, there's a huge opportunity. Probably Constanta will not be Rotterdam anytime soon, but only by doubling it, the amount of business it needs to steal from the other ports is irrelevant, is immaterial. For them, they won't even see the difference. So
who can Constanta steal from?
I guess if it's all those yellow bars are actually the big European ports. You see Rotterdam, you see Antwerp, you see Hamburg, you see Bremen, and so on. All of them are of orders of magnitude bigger than Constanta. If he steals one from each of them, it's actually for Constanta can be quite substantial. On the next page, if you want, this is the volume shipped from Constanta. They're not negligible, but as you see there on the bottom is 5.5% of Rotterdam, 20% of Piraeus volumes. So it's not, stealing a little bit, stealing 0.1 from Rotterdam, 0.1 from Antwerp, and so on, can easily at least double the volumes that go through Constanta. And you also see the trend is being quite stagnant, unfortunately, in the past 5 years, despite the quite significant growth that Romania had.
So how do they steal from Antwerp?
They did not. The idea is to...
No, how can they?
How can they steal?
Yeah.
Well, that's not an easy question
It's easy to spot a problem, but solving it is the harder one.
I think the problem is the same. The problem is the good problem of infrastructure. I think it's even embarrassing to keep talking about how much we lack infrastructure and how many benefits it can have. But unfortunately, it continues to be the truth. Now, having said that, though, I wanted to point out the fact that despite that, the Constanta actually had a very good performance compared to the other counties in Romania. So if you look at the GDP, and that the chart on the left-hand side shows GDP growth and GDP in absolute terms, Constanta is number 3 in Romania. Now, Bucharest is far away, so I cut the chart because otherwise all those points are moving too much to the bottom and to the left, so you don't see them anymore. So Bucharest is a different story. But after that, Constanta is actually, leaving Bucharest aside, is number 2 in the country, and it has the second highest growth. You see there also Giurgiu, which was also growing fast. Giurgiu is also, with the access to the Danube, so I think there is a little bit of correlation. On a per capita basis, Constanta is also the 3rd largest county in Romania. So I think even with the small volumes, Constanta is doing quite well. Now, if you look on the next page.
So the growth in Constanta is even higher than the GDP growth in Bucharest. Barely.
In the past 15 years, it was, yes. Now, that is also always relative. When you start from a smaller base, you can grow faster. But fact is that in 2000, Constanta was number 9 in terms of GDP, the county in Romania. Now it's number 3. So it definitely grew faster than most of the other counties. Now, if you look at what is driving Constanta's business, on the left-hand side, those are the top companies by profitability. And you see there a mixture of port operations, trading that goes with it. You see energy. You don't see that many hotels because it's very fragmented, so there's no individual company which is relevant enough to go in the top 10. On the right-hand side, I wanted to look at the GDP structure by KN codes, by NACI codes, by type of industry, but I couldn't find that.
Just a small correction. The second one is a Damen.
Okay.
How would you
Sorry
know?
about that. But if you look at the, if you look on the right-hand side.
You're a hacker. PwC computers, and I think he wants to make sure that we are not asleep.
Yeah. If you look on the right-hand side, there's the structure of the occupied population. The left bar is Romania, the right bar is Constanta. And there you see a number of things. First, the general observation, agriculture is totally strange in Romania. Agriculture occupies, at the country level, 24% of the population and generates 6% of GDP. So, we keep talking about a lack of labor. We have a huge amount of people which are formally occupied in agriculture, but it's a subsistence, agriculture for subsistence. Many of them living on social benefits and so on. That's a huge pool of people which, if they could be converted, even in basic types of work, could solve a good part of the labor shortage that we have. Constanta does a little bit better than that. So the fact that it has a smaller weight, it means that there are less people which have subsistence agriculture. But I think it's a fact that industry is underweight in the county. So you see that the weight of the population employed in industry is quite a bit lower than throughout the country, which shows an opportunity. Trade is bigger, transport is bigger. Of course, there's no surprise because of the specifics of the region. But again, to come back to the earlier discussions, IT&C and professionals, real estate, those types of things are underweight in Constanta. I very strongly believe that IT&C could be a strong opportunity for the region in a very short run. Proximity to Bucharest, a very attractive city, a very likable, a vibrant city. I think it can attract people in the IT&C space quite easily. What is holding Constanta back is university. I think there's a clear need of scaling up the university, both in terms of capabilities as well as in terms of scale. Plus, of course, the services, administrative services, BPO, those types of things. So, having said that, though, Constanta is doing quite well, but there is a significant potential because of this proximity. And while Mehmet in the earlier session managed to almost dismantle our hope, our belief in Romania as an energy hub, I think in terms of logistics hub, that's a little bit more difficult to dismantle. Because whereas the pipes, you can move them up and down, east or west, based on geopolitics. The map is, all the countries are quite small on the map if you look at it from the helicopter. I think the seas are, you can't move them. And the big advantage of Constanta is that location. And if we move over to the next chart, There we show those are a little bit difficult to read and quite complicated, but on the left-hand side, that's the most traditional route from China. So you see how it goes, it goes south, then it goes west, and then it goes all the way up to the Netherlands ports. That small star is Constanta, and that small shortcut can actually reduce the distance by 2,400 sea miles. That's roughly 1,300 kilometers. The average speed of a boat is about 22 kilometers per hour. So if you do a calculation, that can save roughly 6 days at least. Transportation from China to Europe takes between 30 and 40 days, depending on where it leaves and where it goes. So 6 days out of 30, is quite a bit. To that, you also need to add the fact that from where it gets, then you need to ship it, you need to transport it by road or by rail to the other countries. So all in all, you can reduce not only the time, but you actually can reduce the cost substantially. We are talking about 20, even 20+% cost reduction by moving goods through Constanta rather than by moving them via Rotterdam or Antwerp or the other European ports. And this is quite factual, so it's not, it's not driven by geopolitics, it's driven by business decisions. When you ship something, you want to do it faster and you want to do it cheaper. It doesn't matter, there are no pipes, there are only seas and oceans, you just take the smallest route. Now, how should Constanta benefit from all that? Frankly speaking, I think doesn't depend only on Constanta. The whole idea behind this is to move things into Constanta and then to ship them throughout Europe where they need to get, and vice versa, to take them from Europe and ship them to China or to Asia or to the eastern part via Constanta. But in order to do that, you need to have the connecting points. So definitely infrastructure is the key point. So if we move over to the next page, please. What we need, first we need to build that infrastructure that we should have built maybe 20 years ago. Second, of course, financing. It's always is a strong debate on finance. Is never a problem. Finance is always available, and so on. It's true. If you look at the national level, loans as percentage of GDP has been declining substantially in the past years. Again, despite the economic growth. So Romania is all the companies are under indebted. Now the exposure is very small. Now it's difficult to see who's right. The banks are too cautious, or the companies are not able to build a solid project and a solid business case. That's always a discussion. But financing, although widely available, that loans to GDP is less than half the EU average. It's abnormally low for a country that should develop and grow. Some problems need to be fixed at the interface between companies and the workers, even the state and the financing. Then the predictable laws and regulation is quite easy. Fiscal environment. It's very important when you do those types of logistics operations and you move things in and out of Europe and in between countries, is to have good customs, taxation, laws, incentives, and so on. And the last point, and actually is not the least important one, is quality of education, because we really need to improve the quality of education, which, although still good, has been declining quite steadily in the past years. So if all of those are being addressed, probably Constanta can at least double, if not increase more the volumes, which will not mean stealing a huge amount of business from the other ports. Actually, it's relatively small, but could mean quite a bit for the country and, of course, for the region. Now, how easy is that? We first did this study, I think it was 10 years ago or so. We are still in the same position, so not much has changed since then. Now, is it complicated? I think it's not that complicated. The truth of the matter is, the highway from Constanta doesn't stop in Bucharest. There is a little bit more from Bucharest to Pitești. Then it stops again. There is a little bit more than from Sibiu and Cluj, the bits and pieces. So, we have some dots. We just need to connect them, which will take a little bit of time, and as a starting point. From there, we need multimodal facilities, we need to build a port infrastructure, we need, there's lots of other things that need to be addressed, but that is really the critical element to be tackled.
That's the roadmap. I think we'll wrap it up then. So Bogdan, thank you for that. Manfred and Reno as well, thank you very much.